Good morning, friends, wherever you are, and welcome to today's Cichlids and Coffee. Hope you're having a nice weekend. I know it's just starting, and I hope you're having a nice cup of coffee. Finally got my my cup from Teespring with the Oscars on it. You can make that out. Might be a little bit too bright with the glare, but that's my Oscar cup. These cups are available at Teespring, and there's the link, and there's a Teespring banner. You just go there. You can pick up mugs and T-shirts, all kinds of good stuff. Let me go ahead and close that. And I like the way this Oscar mug came out, and I'm also offering this T-shirt that I wasn't offering before on Teespring, so check that out too. So let's wait for a few more folks to get on here. Can I get a picture and audio check? Let me know. It looks a little bit bright on my end. Tell me if it looks a little bit bright on your end. How's the audio, the picture, and tell me about the exposure. AV is okay, good. Cichlid Kings, AV is great. Very, very good. Slim Tim, good AV. All right. Hey, Jerry. Mexicali Fish Keeper is here. Who's shooting at their... Oh, hey, NJW from the UK. Hello, my friend. I loved visiting the UK. It was so much fun. So, a lot to talk about today. And a topic that I think is important, and someone said my face is glowing, a little bright. Yeah, let me see if I can just do a little correction on that. There we go. It's just a little bit of a correction. There we go. All right. I hope that's a little better. I don't want you folks to have to wear sunglasses during the live stream. I do have a lot of lights going on. I'm experimenting with different kinds of lighting. I also corrected what you saw in the last live stream where there was a little bit of a blur. If ever I'd move, there'd be some blurring. And I've gone ahead and corrected that. So we were having a problem with the what's called the frame rate. The number of frames. I mean, film basically is just a series of pictures taken within a second, just like those little books you had when you were a kid that you would flick the pages and you would be able to see the item moving. That's basically all video is, and so sometimes the frame rate can be off, and it creates different effects. People sometimes will do it on purpose. You know, they'll want the blur. Like, let's say you're shooting a scene and you want it to be a little dreamlike, right? You want your fish to look a little dreamy. You would use a different shutter rate than, let's say, if you want them super sharp, you might do like 120 frames per second. So anyway, there's a tip for you. And so folks are getting on. Let's let them get on board. The more, the merrier. Brian P. in the house. Hello, Brian P. Hey, Salient. Good afternoon to you. Craig is in the house. Slim Tim JD. All right. And that's better. Thank you, JD. Thank you for that. Yeah, just change the aperture for those of you who know photography. Liberty Bell Cichlids in the house. Great name. Hey, Jerry. Good to see you there, buddy. And Cichlid Kings. Glad you're here, my friend. Hey, Joe. Glad you're here. Thank you for that email. Country Strong and Free. Boy, I love that name. Country Strong and Free. And let me see. When your Oscars get bigger, Ben Ochart, the pick won't fit on the cut. Chris G, always a comedian. Gia Aquatics and Pets. Oh. Werner Duprez. Uncle Ben. All right. Audio is good, a little bright. Okay, Cat Sailor. Hey, Cat Sailor. Good to have you here. And hey, Sundar from India. Davy Larson, a hair bright. I just got out of the shower, so it's better than my hair being bright. A hair bright. Okay, so I think we've corrected that already. So let's see. Robin Rayner, greetings from North Carolina. Beautiful state, Robin. Love that state. All right. So, Cat Sailor, good morning, Jen. Okay, good morning all around to everybody. Let's go ahead and do the official start. What do you say? It's just an excuse to take a sip of coffee, really. If you're new to the channel, please be sure to hit that sub button if you like what you see, and the bell. Let YouTube know that something good's going on. Give it a thumbs up, and that would be very appreciated. We're working our way towards 50,000. 50,000. That's going to be pretty awesome. And some shout outs here to my wonderful moderators, the best on YouTube, and also to the channel sponsor, the Cichlids Shack. Once you go shack, you never go back. Such a funny saying. And don't forget to use Shack Attack 10 for food and products, meds, whatever you need, and Shack Attack 15 for fish orders over 100. The discounts do not apply to shipping. He does not make money on the shipping. And one more shout out, and we will get underway here. I think we talked about Teespring, but if you want anything from Amazon, be sure to use the Amazon link. And when you do shop at Amazon and get there using that link, whether you get something from my store or not, what will happen is Amazon will give the channel a small credit, which is awesome. My wife buys all her office supplies using my Amazon store. I think she's keeping it going single-handedly. Also a very big shout out and a very big thank you to the Patreons, the monthly channel supporters. It starts for as little as $3 a month, and it helps me to continue producing video content and building out of the fish room. There are some big changes here in the fish room. I'm going to be talking about them in a video on Sunday. It's either going to come out Sunday or late this afternoon. It's just a walkthrough, just to show you the changes that have occurred here in the fish room. And you're already aware of some of them if you saw the video on the beta, on the duplex and the new beta. So today's topic is all about tank stability and what, in my opinion, and just based on my experience, what I feel has made a tank more stable than another one. If right now, looking at all of my tanks, I would say that probably because of circumstances that have occurred, like with the redoing of the 210 gallon to my left here, and the adding of the wood, the new substrate. I mean, a lot of stuff was just mixed up, and disrupted. This tank behind me, brand new tank, right? Brought over a lot of substrate, brought over seeded media with a lot of beneficial bacteria, right? But still, it's a new tank, and it is starting to sort of get its legs, if you will, starting to get that rock stability. So if I had to give you the probably the number one, probably the most important thing on a tank being rock stable, and that has to be time. It has to be time. Now, there are some points that have to be made about that. It's not just time. It's also during that time not doing incredibly disruptive things like swapping out all the substrate, throwing out your filtration and going with a new filtration system with new media, or adding 25 fish all at once to a group of 3 or 4. I mean, there are events that can shake things up during the time, and sometimes those events are you have to do them. But if you do things patiently and gradually, You add fish in smaller bunches. You swap out, if you want to swap out substrate, you do it slowly. You remove or add decor in very small increments. Things of this nature, and you're real good on your basics. Matching temperature, treating the tank, adding nutrients, things of that nature. Little by little, what'll happen is that tank will start to really, really become rock stable. Now, this is particularly true, and I wish I could give you a scientific paper on it. I've just picked this up from numerous very experienced old school fish keepers, but also having a substrate that is sand, a small grain substrate that you leave alone for the most part, and don't disturb it, and let that substrate do its thing. Let it start to grow what it needs to grow, and maybe disrupt the surface, rake the surface down to maybe a 1/4 inch, just to kind of break up any mulm or anything that might be forming on the top of it, and suspend some of the detritus so that when it settles back down, you can very easily vacuum it up by running your siphon maybe a 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch off the sand, right? So you're not sucking up a lot of sand, and let that substrate start to become just a real stable, unmoved, untouched part of the aquarium. It becomes sort of like one of the pillars of the aquarium in my mind with regards to beneficial bacteria. So if your basic husbandry, your basic care of fish, right? Water treatment, watching temperature, proper diet, things of this nature, you're not doing drastic events in the aquarium, I would say in about 6 months to a year, you're going to have a tank that if you had a power outage, if you had a loss of heating or cooling, and it's just so it's so rock solid, and the fish will be so robust that it starts to get more and more bulletproof. And you'll start to see health, you'll start to see colors, you'll start to see, activity. Breeding is a real good example. If you have a tank that is a lot of breeding is going on, chances are you have a pretty stable. That's one of the things you look for. It's not the only thing, and it's not always right, but it's a sign. I watched a video the other day on taking care of a betta and points to consider when taking care of betta. And one of it was a male betta making a bubble nest, even though there's no female around. And maybe this applies to African cichlids, digging a pit when there's no females, it's an all male tank. Is that a sign that the fish is relaxed, is interested in breeding, and is actually thriving? So that would be like one of the signs you look for, right? So you look for color, you look for their appetite, you look for behaviors that are related to breeding, and this tells you that your fish are getting better and stronger, and all this comes from having a tank that is very, very well established. Now, part of that also means testing. Now, I know in the past I've released videos about, I think one of them was called The Truth About Testing, I think it was, and how a lot of folks, including myself, have gone for long periods of time where you're just eyeballing the aquarium. You're just looking at it. How does it look? Does it look good? If it looks good, I'm good to go. But I think, and this has been more the case with me recently, especially with firing up a new betta tank, firing up these two, the 210 and the 300 behind me, I've been testing more. Just keeping an eye on things, just watching and making sure that, that those ammonia and chlorine nitrate, or nitrite rather, stay at 0, and my nitrates stay low, like, around 20, 10, 20, 30, somewhere in there. Not that concerned about nitrate. If it was at 40 to 80, I wouldn't be alarmed. but I'm just like keeping an eye on it, just watching and seeing if what I'm doing is right. I've also shifted away from, and I've mentioned this in a couple live streams and a couple videos. I've also shifted away over time from the enormous water change. I know a lot of folks out there do it, and this is not a knock on them. You do what works for you. If you're getting good results, don't change on my account, right? But I have found that large water changes, I think they're disruptive to the fish. They're a bit they risk the issue of a pH shift in pH if something has occurred at the tap. If something's been added by the city to the tap that's a little bit out of line, you risk that factor. A temperature change that occurs during refilling. Somebody starts the dishwasher, gets in the shower. If you have a home that doesn't have the biggest hot water heater, I mean, you could end up putting cold water into a tank, not even know it because you set the temperature correctly when you got started, but someone fired up the dishwasher and one of the washing machines, right? And all of a sudden your temperature drops. So I'm doing 20%, 30% water changes, and I'm doing them where before I might go every 2 weeks or so, or I'm doing them every week just to kind of freshen things up. I'll put some minerals in there, and so I guess patience. Nothing real drastic or dramatic. Consider a deep substrate. Do your research on it. Don't take my word for it. Look around. Look at what some of the veterans are doing. Look what they're doing in the saltwater community. Look and that sort of thing. Sometimes people talk about gas getting trapped under a deep substrate and then being dangerous. And I did some research on that, found that was a wives' tale, and if it would occur anywhere, it would be in saltwater tanks, not necessarily in freshwater. And so now with that in mind, some of you, I don't know if some of you watched Jerry's recent video, and I'm sure Jerry doesn't mind me talking about this since he did release a video, but Jerry just had a disaster occur, and we talked about it on the phone, and it was really, really hard to hear what he went through because it was devastating. And so when he asked me, well, what's the topic of tomorrow's live stream, and I told him, well, tank stability. I think he thought I was picking on him. Especially since the disaster occurred with Aquara, Electric Blue Aquara, and Cichlid Brothers had just released a video on the success they were having with Electric Blue Aquara. He said, okay, the world is conspiring to jump on me right now, and I don't. And but here we have a situation where you have a completely and totally unexplained devastation of an aquarium, an aquatic system, a large tub that had good test results, that had nothing dramatic, right? No water change had occurred, no additives, nothing new. A plant from a healthy tank had been brought over and put in. That was the only real change, but it was coming from a healthy tank that was healthy after and continued to be healthy after we removed the plant. The only change on record. And yet an entire tub full of fish. I don't know what it was, Jerry. You can comment if you want. 40, I think it was 40 fish, something like that. End up belly up. And all he's left to do is to drain the tub, sterilize it, right, and start over again. And this happens. It happens to all. I remember John with KG Tropicals. I mean, he had a discus tank that just gave him unbelievable problems. He couldn't get the discus to get healthy. They kept becoming sick and dying, and finally he ended up just shutting it all down after the discus, sterilizing the tank. He might even have thrown out the tank for all I know. I mean, it was just very frustrating. And we all know that John Hudson is an experienced and knowledgeable fish keeper. So these kinds of things that come out of nowhere and blindside us, I think can be helped with, a stable, putting fish into a stable tank, which is, I think, one of the reasons I think James Largo is pushing to turn this 90 into a discus tank, because it's so rock solid and stable right now that you'd be able to add the discus and not really worry, because it's such a, it's just such a seasoned tank that the discus would do well in there, as opposed to setting up a brand new tank for fish and then throwing in a bunch of expensive fish and then having issues occur. But if you've ever had that happen, have you had a situation occur where there was no explanation? That to me is probably the most frustrating thing in fish keeping, where all your test results look good, and boy, I wish I had a dime for every time I've been asked that question. My test results were good, and all my fish died suddenly, or comments like that. I've heard it so many times over the years. If you've had it happen, if you've ever figured out what it was that killed yours, type it below, and maybe we'll have a light bulb go on with regards to what happened with Jerry's tank. I know I created, early on with the 90-gallon, I created a spike by doing too much. Water change, vacuuming, servicing of both hang-on back filters, and I thought the tank was stable enough to handle it. I treated the water. I thought I was on top of it, and all of a sudden the fish just started dying off, one after another, and then the water got back to normal. The beneficial bacteria caught up, so my test results were okay, but the damage from the ammonia spike was one that they couldn't recover from. The red shoulder, the 2 geophagus, and the AC hecali are what remained of a group of fish that was twice that many. So, including a beautiful starry night, a beautiful red spotted severum. I mean, I lost some fish that I loved, but in that case, I was able to go back and go, okay, here's what happened. Here's the boneheaded thing that I did that I shouldn't have done, that went against my own advice, and lesson learned, right? A hard lesson learned. Like so many of the lessons we learn in fish keeping, right? We learn them the hard way. So if you've had a situation where you've had a sudden devastation, a sudden fish loss, and figured it out afterwards, some common ones are an increase in temperature that starve them for oxygen, and then the fish die off until there's enough oxygen for the remaining fish. So you, like 4 or 5 die and then 3 or 4 remain, all your test results are fine. The fish now look okay, and you never figure out why those first 4 or 5 died. It drives you crazy. It'll drive you crazy because you don't know, right? There's like oxygen depletion that kills fish is probably one of the most frustrating, because it appears and disappears. It's a little bit like an ammonia spike that and then the bacteria catches up overnight, but the fish are already been damaged from that ammonia, and so it's then when you go test, everything's good because it's corrected itself, but it's corrected itself after the damage was done. So at any rate, yeah, if you folks want to share, if one of you, Jerry, I guess you could do it, share the link to that video where you talk about what happened, and you folks can go there and see Jerry's video, Jerry's fish room video on what happened. So that's the key. Really is time, but then what you do within that time for stability and a bulletproof tank is really taking each action on what I call a gradient, or not as drastic as you would normally want it. And I tell you, and I include myself in this group of people. I can be impatient. I can just be impatient and try and get the end result now. as opposed to giving it the right amount of time or taking my time. And, I jump in and I go, okay, by the end of the day, I'm going to have fish in this new tank, and I'm going to, I get all inspired, and it's like patience. Man, there's probably no more important word in fish keeping than patience. And when you want a beautiful fish and you want to see him in a big tank, you want to see him now, right now. And we all become like 7-year-olds on Christmas Eve when we're doing things like that. And we have to sort of like, all right, put the brakes on, hold on, take it slow, take a breath. All right, let's open this up a little bit to discussion here, and let me hear what you folks have to say about this, and I'll see if I can read the chat here. And I see a link to glass cages. So Jerry, you must have brought up the additional life conspiring against you. I didn't bring up the part about glass cages, but at any rate, let's see what you folks have to say about this, and let's open this up to discussion on what you think. What do you think makes a tank rock solid, bulletproof, stable? And what experience have you had that you learned from about what can upset tank stability? Just go ahead and let's go ahead and open it up here, and Jerry says, I'm not stopping. I just started growing out 10 super red plecos. Start breeding. Yeah, you got to get back on the horse, right? I mean, one of the things we talked about was there are events in fish keepers' lives that actually get them to leave the hobby. I know a couple that disappeared, and it was after a big setback like that. They just disappear. They leave the hobby. They clean out the tank. They put it on Craigslist. They're done. And, I admire folks that will hit something like that and then get right back on the horse, which is what you're doing, Jerry, and that's good. Salient Aquatics, let the canister filters run for months, and doing less is best. Learn this the hard way. I've got to agree with you on that, Salient. I let my canisters run forever, and in my update video that'll be out this afternoon or tomorrow, you're going to see what I did with the Sun 704B that I've finally got installed, and I'm going to let that thing run for probably 6 months, maybe 9 months, because of the way I have it set up. And it's going to be doing water polishing. The 210 already looks better, and I took a chunk. Spoiler alert! I took a chunk of sponge that was sent to me by Swiss Tropicals, and just cut a square block and cut out the middle a little bit, and it slipped right over the intake. So I've got a wonderful pre-filter on there that isn't going to let any big chunks get in there, and it's not going to let any food get sucked up. The food will be like picked off by the fish, right? So, yeah, I agree. I think canisters, just the less you mess with them, the better. And also, the less you mess with them, the less chance of putting them back together incorrectly or creating wear and tear on the O-rings and things of that nature. So, and for those of you who don't know this about me, every canister that I run, I put in a Rubbermaid container with a pad at the bottom and a water sensor at the bottom that triggers what is called a watchdog alarm if water ever comes out of a canister. Knock on wood, I haven't had leaky canisters, but an ounce of prevention. Okay, let's see here. All things fish. Metsicali Fish Keeper, there's no tie between a water change and filter maintenance at the same time. There is such a small amount of bacteria. That's true. There is a very small amount. There is some, but there's a very small amount of bacteria in the water column. It is it is in the substrate, on your decor, and on your media. And but in my case, I did some vacuuming. I did a cleaning of the media. In the case of the marine lands, I was using the filters that you swap out, the cartridges, and so I think I did disrupt things in my case. But you are absolutely right on that water column comment. Jackie Moore, my tanks have done better since I went back old school and stopped buying all the products that people say I need. Well, Jackie, my hat's off to you. I think that's very smart. And I've had people who tell me that they have well water. They don't even treat the water. They don't use any water conditioner. And if you go back 30, 40 years, right, which maybe that's more than your age, but if you go back a while, there was a time when none of these products, we just had very basic products available. And now there's nutrients and conditioners and bacteria in a bottle and, black water additives and all this stuff you can put in there, and different kinds of salts, things of that nature. And I don't know, pH buffers, right? pH up, pH down buffer type of products, where I think before what would happen to a fish keeper is over time, they would end up with the fish that could adapt to the circumstances that they were providing. Some fish would die off, some would make it, but eventually they'd end up with this real strong strain of fish that were suited well for their kind of water, as opposed to adding this, adding that, adding this, and especially if you're chasing pH. I put a video out one time, stop chasing pH, and that's one that can really create havoc for the fish. Gagal Bayak, hi, I'm from Indonesia. Well, hello, Gagal. Good to have you here. All right, I'm cruising the chat here. Jay Fuller, I lost a tank during a power outage. It was a 20 long with neons and a cleanup crew, all gone. I do have 11 tanks up so far. Wow, sorry to hear that, Jay. And I wonder what it was that got them. I wonder if it was temperature, or was it a lack of oxygen? And certainly, if you are in an area that is prone to power outages, for example, if I was still living in California, I'd probably have 2 or 3 of those battery backups that you've seen in my prior videos, and I'd probably have the lithium batteries, like the air pumps, lithium air pumps that go 48 hours. I probably have one of those on every one of my aquariums. Right now, I've got it on 4 aquariums. I have lithium, so they still get oxygen in the event of a power outage. But I bet you Diamond was probably oxygen. Now I know neons. I've heard neons in general, more the regular neons as opposed to cardinals. But the neons I've heard can be sensitive, and I've had 2 batches of 5 neons and then 5 neons, and both of them were gone within 3 months. So I've kind of given up on neons. Personally, maybe I'll try them again someday after some of these tanks become more seasoned. But did you ever figure out what it was? Was it, you think it was temperature or oxygen? I'd be curious what you came up with. Robert Johnson, any plans to do Mabuna again? Well, Mabuna are very pretty. And I do have a bit of a working arrangement with underwater galleries. So I could probably get a lot of their caves and then glue them together. Either use tank silicone or maybe some gel, some super glue gel, and just make just stacks of caves, right? And throw it on top of some sand, and maybe throw some in there. I love yellow labs, and I also love the yellowtails, and I mean, some of the Mabunas are beautiful. You've heard the story. The only reason I gave them up was because I only had limited space back then. This is back in California, and the ones I had gotten big and were harassing the peacocks quite a bit. They're very territorial. So I have a tank. I have like I don't know, it's a 30-gallon tank and I also have a 60-gallon acrylic that I'm doing nothing with. That could be a very nice Mabuna tank, even though I'm thinking that might be a tank I can move the fish in the 92 and then turn that 90 into the discus tank that James is pressuring me to start. So, but at any rate, yeah, it's not completely off the table, but it's on the list of future projects. It's probably midway down the list of the things I'm doing. Salient likes Texas Holy Rock. Texas Holy Rock is awesome, and it adds, of course, minerals, buffers the water, and I think it looks beautiful. If you start to get algae on it, that can be really tough to clean off, and it can be very, very expensive. So just things to consider. Drew, I've got Mabunas in a 75, thinking about switching to peacocks. Yeah, mine was a 60 when I did the switch. I had a 60-gallon, and I ended up switching. Gia Aquatics and Pets. What's wrong with the chat? I don't know. I didn't see your comment, Gia. Let me go back in the chat here. Hey, Zen Ginger in the house. And Elizabeth Wagner in the house. Man, oh man. Liquid Zoo, Only Fins. Chris G, yes. There is going to be no live stream. There's going to be no live stream on Saturday, this coming Saturday, because I'm going to be out of town. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and do a Cichlids and Suds Wednesday evening. And I think, what do we come up with as the best time? 7 p.m. Central? Yeah, 7 p.m. Central. I didn't want to run into Jason over at Primetime Aquatics. Anyway, Gia, I'll tell you what. Just go ahead and type in your question again, and I'll be sure to pick it up. But I don't know. I don't see it here. Jay Benitez, Reptiles. Hey, Ben. Hey, to you too. And Hario Ortega, hello from California. Love your channel. Peacock lover here. Hey, Hario. That's a great name. Hario. I've never heard that before. It's Jairo Ortega? Jairo Ortega. Jairo? Or is it pronounced Hero? Jairo? Great name. All right, let's see here. Jerry's Fish Room. I have my Yuling. Boy, people love that beer. People love that beer, Yuling. All right. Thank you, Scott. It's very nice of you. So let's see here. Go ahead and hit me with your questions. It's nothing personal against you, Guy. I assure you of that. We're not ignoring you, I promise. All right, let's see. Kent AJDK. Travis Plank, all things fish, perhaps. Okay. Uh-oh. Someone just hit me. Robert Egan comes in with a super chat. Thank you, Robert. I appreciate that, buddy. Yeah, do it. I'm going to email and ask your opinion about my South American tank. Can you include a short video? Include a video with your email. And those of you that don't know, you can reach me at ben.o.cichlid@gmail.com. And I'll be happy to respond. Did I miss any other super chats? Let me scroll back here. Okay, didn't. All right. All right, I'm cruising for questions. I start to read a question and then I realize that it's just a conversation that's occurring between all of you. And I really don't want to interrupt you. So all right, let's see here. But yeah, Robert, go ahead and send that over. Hero, any other online fish store you recommend to buy male haps and peacocks? I bought some from Imperial Tropicals. Well, I'm partial to my sponsor, right? The Cichlid Shack. I've also had success with Imperial. I mean, I've gotten fish from them in the past. I won a fish from them one time. It was kind of cool. And Wonder of Cichlids. I'm not sure, is Wonder of Cichlids still offering fish? That was Cunningham. Cunningham's a great guy. Cunningham Cichlids. You know, a lot of good places out there. Jerry has a good source that is a sponsor of his channel. So, I mean, there are a lot of good ones out there. Check out your local stores. Dave's Rare. Dave's Rare is legit. Dave's Rare. And I've seen Dave speak at conferences, and he's like the real deal. All things fish, do you have many parameter swings in your local water? I often find that some people run into problems when their source tap water changes due to seasonal changes. I test my tap from time to time, and I've been pleasantly surprised. Zero nitrate, almost undetectable levels of chlorine and chloramine. So I've been very happy with my tap water here in Nashville. So, but I do test it from time to time. And yes, when the weather changes, or let's say there's some flooding in the area, and we do get floods here sometimes, not at my house because I'm a little high up, but in some parts, maybe they'll maybe superchlorinate. They'll do things to prevent bacteria and other kinds of stuff that can occur during floods. So not a bad idea to test your tap from time to time. But I don't think getting big swings is a problem for me. At least it hasn't been. Doesn't mean it's not going to be. El Consigliere, that's like the is that like the mafia the mafia attorney? El Consigliere. Hi, Ben. As I lost an entire tank of 20 AF recently while I was on holiday, can I ask if 3 dead fish not removed in time could have been the reason to kill all the rest? Well, naturally what's going to happen is you are going to get a high amount of ammonia production from the decaying fish. I mean, even decaying plants, right? Decaying food. I mean, these things are... Now, I do hear that food and fish waste, detritus, that kind of thing, after a while can become... just can neutralize after a while. This is why running canisters for a long time is not particularly dangerous. And you'll notice that as you run them over a long period of time, you don't start having an upward creep in your nitrates. It doesn't happen because you're replacing it and then it neutralizes. You replace it with more gunk, that neutralizes. So it kind of stays kind of level. It can clog up a little. That'd be the big concern why you have to crack that canister open, but because you don't want it to clog up. But yes, fish, because of what the bulk, right? You're going to get a long decomp. And so, yes, you will get ammonia production. And that ammonia can be hard on other fish. So I would say that was a possibility. I certainly the only way to know for sure would have been to test it. And but if I had to guess, I would say yes. Salient Aquatics, what's your thought on leaving some algae in the tank? It's good in moderation for aquariums and looks natural. I don't try to eradicate it. You and I are on the same page. Salient Aquatics. If you look at the back of my tanks, you'll see brown, green algae. I don't bother cleaning off the back of my tanks. Algae does consume nitrates. It does add oxygen, and I believe it consumes ammonia. So nitrate is our friend, and I do have in the plans, in the works, to add an algae scrubber to the sump under the 300 gallon, and that is a way of actually intentionally growing algae in a controlled environment because it reduces nitrates, adds oxygen, consumes ammonia, right? So algae is good. Green algae, I think, is the best. I think it looks the best, and I don't scrape it off from areas. I keep the glass as clean as I can, but I don't. But besides the glass panels, and if the plants get black algae, I don't like that. So if a plant gets black algae, especially these real complicated, detailed plants that I have, I just pull them out and I give them a bleach, like a few tablespoons of bleach in a 5-gallon bucket, and I fill the bucket up with water, let them sit overnight, give it a good rinse, then let it sit overnight with some tank conditioner and water, and they come out like new. I don't like any algae on the plants, artificial plants. Bejan Rez. Bejan Itez. Itez. Ben, what are you, I guess, your opinions on denitrate reactors? Are you saying nitrate reactors? Denitrate reactors using a cylinder, low flow pump, and media like CCAM. Well, you see those in use in the saltwater community, and I've never heard anybody really rave about it. I don't find a lot of information when I go looking for nitrate reduction, and you Google nitrate reduction, you'll get advertisements for the people that make those, but you don't hear a lot of comments from people raving about, I put this in and my nitrates went right down. So I don't know. I haven't used one, so I can't really comment. I can't really comment knowledgeably. If you folks have any information about these denitrate reactors, I know they're popular in the saltwater community, and I tend to trust what's going on there because their stock is so expensive. So you know that they're doing a lot of research. In my mind, they're sort of like the racetrack. Like if you want to look at where motorcycle and automotive technology is going, look at the racing circuit, and you'll see technology that is going to be coming to commercial cars pretty soon, right? Or eventually. So they're sort of like the race car of fish keeping is the saltwater, especially the people who keep the large corals. Those corals can be $1,000 a piece, right? Check out Inventory King. Check out Paul at Inventory King. He's got quite a coral collection. Maybe he's using a denitrate equipment. All right, let's see here. Well, you wouldn't, Zen, you wouldn't do, you wouldn't, definitely don't use and I don't know if this is what you mean. Maybe I'm misreading it, but you would never use the bleach technique is only for the artificial plants, of course. You probably know that. And what I have found works in cleaning algae and stuff off of real plants is a little piece of filter media. Like the Aquarium Co-op sells those white sheets, and inevitably when you cut those white sheets to fit a filter, there's going to be a little piece left over. So what I do is I use that little piece and I very gently rub the real plants with it, and it cleans them right off. It takes the algae right off of them. The 8-gallon Horizon tank that I have, I'll go to do service on it, and one of the Anubias will be in a ball of green algae. I mean, I have to remove it and slowly untangle the green algae from it. I'm actually making algae balls, right? I'm making like little, like almost like moss balls out of the algae, and I'm dropping it into the Pleco tank and letting the Plecos have at it. It's like a string algae. And at any rate, yeah, using gently using filter media, just cut it into, you know, a 3-inch by 3-inch pad, whatever you have left over. Put one finger behind the leaf and gently rub the top of it. You'll find it actually comes clean. Now, if you have a very small detailed plant, let's say you have like a Nana Petite, like you have a very small petite Anubias, that can be a little tedious and a little hard to do without breaking some of the plant. So you just got to really watch it there, but it's doable. It takes time, takes a lot of patience. We're back to that word patience. That's the key word in today's live stream, patience. Chris G comes in with a super chat. Thank you, Chris. I have been on many live streams, Ben's 99.9% answering. All right. Not sure. I think I get what you're saying, so I'm going to say thank you. And thank you for that live stream. Country, strong and free. Every time I scrub my wood, it just comes back thicker and stronger like a beard. You know, I've got some wood in a couple of my tanks. It's pieces of wood that are attached to slate. And if you're familiar with my tanks, you know it's like those pieces. They look like horns coming out of the ground, just long pieces. And I've got one piece that I could probably put my finger through it. It's gotten so soft and mushy, and I'm almost tempted to take it back. I mean, I paid a good amount of money for this piece of wood, and it's just become mush. Like if you touch it, like a big chunk comes off of it, and anyway, very frustrating. The Mopani wood from Zoomed, that stuff is rock solid and it's beautiful. I mean, I don't know if you can, maybe if I turn the camera, you can see the Mopani wood. Let me on here. Get you past all the lights. Let me remove this light. You see that Mopani wood there on the bottom right? That stuff is like, man, it is just rock solid. I love the shape of it. I love the way it looks, and it's staying nice and solid. It's getting darker and richer over time, and it's relatively inexpensive compared to what you pay for wood normally. So I've been very happy. The piece of wood that's turning into mush is in the 29-gallon community tank. And that's the piece of wood that is falling apart. And it's very similar in shape to that wood that you see there on the left side of this 90-gallon. Right in there, you see that little piece of wood there. I bought it at the same time. For some reason, that piece is holding together fine. And I don't know if it's because the one in the 29-gallon has that expert matic creating a high amount of circulation around it. Maybe that's making it mushy. But Country Strong and Free, if that was a way of making the wood better, thicker, and stronger, I think that would that would be good advice. So get back over here. Now that I've changed all my lighting. All right. Okay, let's see what else is going on here. I'm cruising the chat. Thank you, Chris G. Now I understand. I wasn't entirely sure what you were saying there, but I got it now. Thank you very much for that. All right, let's see here. Robert Johnson, you are right. The 2 gold-spotted severums are going to go into that tank, and I'd like to add some more geos. I'd like to try redhead tapajos again. And yeah, more so. There's one red shoulder in there hiding out in the back corner. He doesn't like the lights when I film. But yeah, more severums. I love severums. They're cool fish. Very, very cool fish. I resent that people call them the poor man's discus. I think that that would hurt their feelings if they had feelings. All right, let's see. Country, so it looks like I think somebody took the bait on Country Strong and Free, their comment on how the wood gets stronger and harder. Now, this is a family show, you know that. I was wondering who was going to jump on that. All right. Oh, James Green has a good tip. Town water. Consider subscribing to your town's water department email list. Ours sends out reports, warnings before any changes, and warnings before flushing. Great tip. Great tip. So if you're in a town that offers that, get on the mailing list, and I think I'm going to do that. I think I'll do that. That's a very good tip. I used to have it in California. I used to have the Arcadia water provider send me information, and I would check their test results. They would actually send out a link to ongoing testing that they would be doing of water. Ooh, man. Is it Silent? S-I-L-E-H-N-T, Silent? Is there any point to doing water changes if my tap water is coming out 60 to 90 ppm? Man, that's high. And yeah, you still want to do water changes for mineralization. Minerals tend to settle. The only way your fish get minerals is from the water column. Some in the food, maybe. But a lot of it is just, they just sort of absorb, right, from what's in the water. And over time, minerals can settle. And so you either have to be doing top-offs or water changes to re-mineralize and add, or I guess you can add it manually too with water additives. Things like the Malawi lake salts, those are just trace minerals that you add to the water column that the fish can then absorb and helps them. I do use the Seachem lake salt. I do use it on all of my African cichlid tanks. I think that does contribute to the color of the fish, right? But I don't know what you would do in a situation like that. Maybe get an RO system, perhaps, that removes everything. Or maybe that comment earlier about a denitrate, denitrifying type of equipment. Maybe look into something like that. Have your fish adapted to the high nitrates? I mean, maybe they've adapted that high. I mean, I've heard stories of nitrates at around 100 and fish are still doing okay. So it might be all right. That's high. That would be a situation where you might want to ask your local water supplier why. Just send them a quick, go, look, why am I getting such a high nitrate level? Now, it might be occurring at their level, or it might be occurring between them and your house, depending how old the infrastructure is or what's going on with the groundwater. I mean, the ground in your area, could be a variety of factors. All right. I'm cruising the chat. Elizabeth Wagner, 300-year-old oak tree I've been burning the dead wood while buying. Hey, you're not alone. You're not alone. I think fish keepers are a little bit reluctant to wild harvest wood. I mean, they're afraid it might introduce some contaminant into the tank, and there's something to be said for just going to a fish store and picking out a beautiful piece of wood that has been, actually provided to you specifically for an aquarium. But I'll tell you, the wood that's in this 210 gallon that I found at the local lake, I'm loving it. I love it. I had to cut it because I couldn't get it into the tank. It was so big. But again, I'll turn you guys, gals, and let me do this so I can see what I'm doing here. And I'll make a light change here. That massive piece of driftwood that is going across the middle was attached to that very complicated piece on the far right. And let me light the aquarium up a little bit better so you can see it. Yeah, the fish love swimming in and out of it. I love watching them swim around it, in and out of it. There's a pleco that lives right in the split in the wood there, right dead center in the aquarium. There's a split, a fork in the wood. There's a pleco that lives in there. You can see his tail just sort of flapping outside the middle of it. And but that is what is called a wild harvested, locally harvested piece of wood. And it was quite an adventure getting it here. But and I scrubbed it and scrubbed it and scrubbed it and dug into any area that was soft to make sure there were no bugs in there. And I got a lot of bugs out of it. And eggs, things of that nature. But I really cleaned it out, let it out in the sun. It was out in the sun for 2-3 months. Power washed it like a dozen times, sanded it, and of course it floats. So it's all wedged under the Euro bracing of the aquarium. It's wedged under the Euro bracing. Otherwise, it would just pop out the top because it's still very, very buoyant. It just wants to float. But yeah, Elizabeth, you should harvest some of that oak. Why not? Right? It'll save you a lot of money. A big piece of driftwood will cost you $100 or more, right? So why not? Why not just harvest it? All the fish in that 90 gallon are just doing phenomenally well. Jack Dempsey tends to be a little moody and will eat and then not eat, and will go kind of pale, and then all of a sudden just be all black and get his color back. He just goes through these moods. I'm not sure what it is, and sometimes I'm about to start worrying, and all of a sudden he starts eating again. And today I put some bloodworms in there, and he just ate like crazy. So he's the only fish that I have a little radar on right now. The eye biter in the 55-gallon is eating like a pig. The other day he got like 5 or 6 krill. Actually shoved 5 or 6 krill in his mouth. I couldn't believe it. I'd drop one in and he'd go get it. I'd say, okay, well, let me drop another one in. He'd go get it. Drop another one in. I mean, like 5 or 6 pretty good sized little krills. I mean, he looked like a squirrel, but he's fattening up really nice, and will soon be ready to go into the 300. I do want to get some other cichlids. James Largo, if you're listening, I'm gonna get some more African cichlids. I'd like to bring him over with more fish. I'm a little reluctant to add just one fish at a time, even though if you turn all the light, if you give him a feeding, give your fish a feeding, turn the lights off, and then add the new fish. And I have had success with that. And then when the lights come on, everybody's kind of fat and full and not feeling too much like fighting. And the other fish just seems like part of the scenery. So they just accept them. So that does tend to work. So are we still on hardwood? Is that what? Okay, let's see here. Whip's World is talking about fungus. When I've put wood into 2 of the tanks, the wild harvested stuff and a piece of wood that I recently put into the betta tank right here over my shoulder. You can see the distance there. That's the betta tank right there. Betta duplex. Wood that I put in there immediately develops a hair-like fungus, and it disappears. It disappears after a while. Chris G, the baby Plecos are doing great. I think I've got about 30 of them, and some of them are bushy nose. And I had a spotted one, and he jumped out. And I lost a spotted one, like a snowball, which I hate. I'm hoping one of the babies are spotted or snowball. There's a ton of albinos in there. There's probably 5 or 6 albinos. Isn't a ton, but it's some. But they're doing great. They're doing great. Giving them water changes, giving them algae wafers. I put regular protein food in there. They need protein too. You can't just give them algae. They are a little bit carnivorous. If you ever had a fish die and you have a pleco in the tank, you know what I mean. They'll be all over it. So they need some protein. So I do put some of the regular cichlid pellets in there. They go crazy on the cichlid pellets. So they're doing great. They're doing great. And thank you for asking. I haven't shown them in a lot of videos because when I light the tank, they all go inside that hollow piece of driftwood. There's a beautiful piece of wood in there, and it's hollow. So it's like it's like Lord of the Rings. Like where the dwarves live. It's like this little kingdom inside this piece of wood. So they have a bottom entrance and a top entrance, and they all go inside the wood. It's hilarious. And then when I drop a wafer in, they all start to come out. They sense it. They all start to come out. And there's a couple in there that are about 3 or 4 inches now that are almost ready. I could probably put them in with the red spotted severums, and maybe even put them in the 90. I don't think anybody would mess with them. The one that's in the 210 was from that batch, and he's about 4 inches, 5 inches. And thank goodness the big cichlids in there don't really have much interest in him. The Salvini and the Nicaragua were kind of hanging around him and looking. I thought for sure they're going to take a nip, but they didn't. They didn't nip him. His fins look really good still. All right, let's see. Plecos jump. Yep. Plecos can jump. They can also like kind of attach and work their way out and over. So you should have your tank sealed. Jerry's Fish Room comes in with a super chat. Thanks, Jerry. Appreciate that, buddy. No, Zoom Ed has numerous sizes. I believe these are either the small or medium. They're about this big. And I've got a local fish store over. It's called Franklin Pet. And there's a video called "Was It Worth the Drive?" It's about an hour away. Great little pet store. They have birds, reptiles, and fish. And they had a box of the Zoom Ed, and it was $10 a piece. And I just wish I had bought like 20 pieces. But I came home with 3. And it's just great wood. I'm going to go back there and get some more, and I hope they haven't raised their prices. Franklin Pet, really cool place. And I think the video, if one of the moderators want to share the video, it's called, I think, "Was It Worth the Drive?" I think it was the name of the video. Talha Nashir, great name. Hope I'm saying it right. And yes, the answer is yes. Just make sure it's just plain pumice, not treated with anything. And no additives, just plain pumice. I used to use garden pumice in my filters in California. And some people will tell you it is identical to what is being sold as Seachem Matrix. Seachem says it's not. Seachem says it's that their pumice is some kind of a choice, select, curated, small batch. I don't know. All I know is I used pumice and it worked fine. It provides a lot of room for beneficial bacteria. So yes, the answer is yes. Chris G, I love watching Geophagus. I could watch them all day. And it was actually Geophagus that Kevin Green had that got me so interested in him. He had a tank full of Geophagus, and I just love the colors and the activity. The Surimanensis, which are also, I think, called a red stripe, I think we might be talking about the same fish, are some of the bigger geos. They get, I think, 7 inches. I mean, they get nice and hefty. So, and I think I need to have more of them. I think just 2 is just asking for trouble. I wish I had 3 or 4 of them in there. They leave the AC Hecali alone. They don't mess with the little green tear that's in there, my little runt. And they certainly don't mess with the electric blue Acara or the Severum. If I had to pick a boss for that tank, it's probably the electric blue, only because of his strut. But all right, let's see. Country strong and free. We have high nitrates here in central Iowa. Fish seem to do fine if everything else is stayed tidy. Yeah, I mean, if the rest of your fish keeping is strong, yeah, I mean, they adapt. I think in nature, they have fluctuations. They have storms that will wash mountain water, mountainside water down into the streams, and they go through all kinds of changes in nature, and they're a little bit more resilient than I think we give them credit for. All right, let's see here. I'm back in the chat. Yeah, Elizabeth Wagner boils it, and yeah, a lot of things you need to do with the wood I couldn't do because these pieces were just too big, and so I thought about putting them in a tub, and just running super hot water and filling up the bathtub. I was a little bit afraid that it would release a bunch of it would just release a bunch of tannins, and I'd have a tea-colored bathtub. That was my one reluctance. But I tell you, after leaving it in the sun, scrubbing it and sanding it and power washing it, and over several months, it was fine. I haven't had any problems. I did get a little bit of that little white stringy growth, right? Like a little bit of algae on it, and then it's just cleared up by itself. I started going in there and scraping it a little bit, but then I noticed, wait a minute, it's dying back. So it just sort of comes out, then dies back, and so that worked out fine. So, so certainly when you have like the really big pieces of wood, it can provide you certain challenges. All right, let's see here. Hero. Hero, okay. The name is Hero. Any recommendations of a wave maker positioning for a 125-gallon cichlid tank with 2 FX6 and 2 wave makers already? What? Okay, so adding it to because your FX6 gives you some good output and some good water movement already, and you can move those outputs around. I'll usually point one to the surface for oxygen and one downward for water circulation. I would, depending on where you have the FX6 outputs, if you have the FX6 output on one side, I would consider putting a 2,500 to 3,500 gallon per hour wave maker on the other side, and point them at a 45-degree angle towards the front of the tank, the output from the FX6 and the wave maker. So you can put the wave maker on the side. If it has a tilting head, just point it so that they both sort of meet, create a current that meets in the middle, and then tumbles and then comes back. So you have this sort of double circle going. And when I do that, I put my wave maker 2/3 of the way, or 50%, at least 50% down, maybe 2/3 of the way down, so that it kicks up some of the waste off of the bottom, and then that waste goes into the filter intakes. So it sort of vacuums for you. So yeah, and for a 125, you're going to need 2,500 to 3,500 gallons per hour to make a dent. Anything below that, it's not even going to really make a difference. Now, what kind of fish do you have? If you have silver dollars, if you have discus, no, don't do it. If you have fish that don't mind a strong current, go ahead and do it. And even then, put that wave maker on a timer. So maybe it runs for an hour every 2 or 3 hours, and it runs for an hour. And then have it off from 9 p.m. to 7, 8 a.m. Let the fish have limited circulation and water movement while they're sleeping, so they don't get blown around. And but that would be my recommendation on that. I hope that helps, Hero. You guys are out of control. Okay, where are we? Is it really 12:22? I'm on overtime here. I have to put in for some overtime. And I'm keeping you folks away from your weekend. All right. So, any other questions before I wrap this up? Country strong and free, yes. You've got to make sure you have fish that if all the fish are under the wave maker or way on the other side, you have fish that don't like it, right? Sometimes they'll hide under it. My biggest concern with some of these powerful wave makers is a little fish will get in there. Like the grate they put on it is not that, it's not that small. So a fish could get in there and hide, and all of a sudden that thing starts going, and you've got bassomatic, right? You've got a fish smoothie. So at any rate, Yeah, you got to really dial it into your fish. I haven't added a wave maker to the 300 yet because the outputs, on that lock line, the lock line flexible outputs are breaking up the surface, and but there's so much pressure coming out. You can see it up there above me on both sides. There's so much water movement that it's creating sort of a confluence of movement, and the substrate is staying relatively clean in that 300 gallons. So I might still add one later on. We'll see. I'm gonna do a light rake on the substrate and just see how much waste is in there. And if I find that there's more, if it's too much for my liking, I'll go ahead and add. I've got a couple wave makers. One of them from Jerry. And Jerry, thank you for that. I don't know if I told you publicly, thank you for that. And so I would just go ahead and throw one of those in there. Jay Oliver's Guppies and Aquatics. Hello, my friend. And Zen Ginger, you ever have a fish smoothie? Very nutritious. So, Rahul Kumar, how no gender? Well, it depends on the kind of fish you're talking about. It's different for different fish. Carlos Munoz, live long, live, love, laugh. What a great name. Live, love, laugh. Your name actually gives life advice. So you lost a fish in a wave maker. Yeah, I can see that happening. I mean, when they spin up, they don't gradually spin up. They're off, or they're 3,500 gallons per hour. So it's like they don't ramp up. It'd be nice if they did. Give the fish a warning, or maybe vibrate a little bit before they start. Hey, Steamfot in the house. How you doing there, buddy? Good to see you. And he is a fan of fish smoothies. Oh, good to see you there, Bob. All right. So, let's see here. Jackie Moore had a fish get cut in two. Oh, that's horrible. Thank you, Cat Sailor. And yeah, I think we're going long here. And Rahul is asking about cichlid fish. Rahul, I would, the best advice I could give you is probably Google venting fish, or sexing African cichlids, and there'll be videos on actually turning them over and looking. And I think if you have, it depends on how it appears, right? And you can see that one is a female. Sometimes they're too young to tell. As they get older, usually a pointed dorsal and a pointed anal fin, and of course color. Blue starts to come in on the face, and you get prominent egg spots on the anal fin, right? That lower back fin. That can be an indication of a male, even though I have had females that had some color and fooled me. And I kept waiting for the rest of the color to come in and never did because it was a female. But yeah, just Google venting, venting, venting fish, or sexing African cichlids. Just Google that. And just be careful when you Google sexing, because who knows what you'll get. So Robert Egan, I'll send a vid and email during the early week. I will look for it, Robert. And if I don't reply right away, please be patient, because I am going on vacation next week. And I intentionally am going to be, to some degree, off the grid, away from the electromagnetic pulses. Thank you for that super chat, my friend. Very appreciated. And all right. So with that in mind, thank you so much for that super chat. Thank you, all my super chatters. Thank you to my Patreon members. Thank you to my wonderful moderators. And most importantly, thank you to all of you who show up on Saturday and like the video and keep coming back. You rock, my friends. You are the best. I appreciate you more than you know, I think. So with that, I think we will go ahead and wrap up. And you folks are the best. I will see you on Wednesday for cichlids and suds. So put your beer on ice, and we'll have some of this. See you on Wednesday, my friends. That'll be at 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Eastern, and that is, I believe, 5 p.m. Pacific time. So if you're on the West Coast, duck out of work early. I'll write a note if you need one. All right? Thank you, my friends. See you again soon. Bye-bye.